off with the public hearing, yes. And I just,
Ryan French, Chief Financial.
Sir Ryan French, yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
First time up.
We're gonna get the presentation pulled up here. Here it is. Okay, thank you, Chairman Ramirez, Governing Board, Dr. Spurgeon, and West-MEC community. This evening, we are going to be going over the adopted expenditure budget for 25-26. This is a public hearing, so we will be open to comments or questions from community or board after the conclusion of the presentation. Just to let the board know, legislative session did end late this year. The legislature and governor signed the budget on June 27th. That is later than normal, so we did propose and adopt on preliminary forms from ADE. ADE has since issued final forms for the school districts if the school districts need to make any changes. So some school districts proposed their budgets with 0 changes to base support level. And since the legislature provided a 2% increase, the ADE would allow a September revision for school districts to capture any of that missed capacity. Marcy actually proposed the budget with a 2% base increase, and so we didn't have to make any adjustments to the forms. We will be, if and when we have to do a December revision and when we do a May revision, we will be using the new forms issued by the Department of Education. The other things of note that the legislature did during session was they actually approved 2 years worth of exemptions for school districts from the aggregate expenditure limit. That is a constitutional limit that says schools can only account for so much of the state's budget, and if it goes over that, technically the ADE can withhold those funds from the school districts. That's typically a July or an April decision, and that would be devastating to school districts if that were to happen. They exempted us for FY26 and FY27. My thoughts is that's setting up a ballot question in November of 26 to go to the public to maybe make a change to that limit, is why they would do 2 years. Other things that they made changes to is they also funded the school facilities board for $200 million. I know that West-MEC doesn't receive any of those funds, but I came from an elementary district and that was important to us. So I did want to just let the board know $200 million may seem like a lot, but there are more deferred projects in their queue from FY25 than actual allocation for FY26. So hopefully they are able to get a supplemental allocation from the governor, from the state, to help school districts with deferred maintenance. I did talk a little bit about the 2% increase to the base support level. So the base support level increased roughly $100 per weighted ADM, which is statutory required. They have to do 2% or CPI, whichever is lower. And so they chose the 2%. Let's go into the budget or into the assumptions. So the only assumption that West-MEC had to make was ADM for this fiscal year. We did a moderate increase to 9350 of our ADM. We discussed a 2% increase to the base support level, and the 3 numbers here at the bottom are the estimated carry forwards to 3 of our major funds. These are estimates because we have 2 months of encumbrance period to make final payments on last year's bills. But these are the numbers that we believe we're going to be carrying forward into this fiscal year. You will see budget limits. You will see this throughout the budget forms. But these are basically based on the base support level. And the students, this is the formula driven. So these are our budget limits that we have in our 4 major funds. Maintenance and operations is just under $71 million. Capital, just over $84 million, classroom site fund, just over $6 million. And we believe we're gonna have about $20 million left in our bond. That's gonna be used to pay for phase one of our southeast campus. I'm still getting used to the campus names. This is just a comparison from the May revision that you saw in May to the adopted budget that we're gonna have this year. So this is increase of just over, see. Yeah, just about $4 million. Just a side note, we're estimating about $3.8 million in ninth grade funding. We're just a pass through that's going to go directly to the member districts. Capital outlay, we're seeing an increase of just over $2 million. Classroom site fund, so they increased the allocation from 792 to 842 per weighted ADM. We only receive this money based on students that are housed at our central campuses or at our campuses. But we're seeing, because of the growth and because of the increase in the allocation, we are assuming that we're gonna have about $6 million into the adopted budget for this year. Again, we talked a little bit about bond. The May revision showed $50 million in our bond. We've been spending that down with some projects with our build at Southeast and some of our other campuses. We're assuming we're gonna have about $20 million of that left to spend on projects for this fiscal year. We are assuming that that will be spent this fiscal year as well. Next steps for the governing board. Like I said, this is a public hearing, so I will be open to comments from community or board members or questions. But we got the proposed budget. We did everything that we needed to do as far as circulating that information into public newspaper or through the ADE's website. It was posted on ADE's website as well as West-MEC's on the 26th. We have the public hearing this evening, and then there will be an item later this evening to ask you to approve the adopted budget. So at this point, would love to open up to community or board for any questions.
So on the ADM, how confident are you that do you think it'll be over that?
Chairman Ramirez, Member Usam, I have been looking at trends for West-MEC. I do believe it was a moderate estimate. I do believe that we will most likely be looking in May of an increase to capture additional capacity because we are going to go over that number. So it was roughly a let's see, I had it written down here, 1.6% increase from the prior fiscal year. So I would assume that's pretty moderate based on the number of programs that we're going to be bringing in and the popularity of the programs.
Yeah, I'm just thinking with,
increase.
yeah, I'm just
6%.
I was thinking with the 80, with the Agua Fria and then the opening of Southeast, that's gonna bring in a lot more. I know Agua Fria is it's already packed.
Yeah, the very nice thing is that we can really revise the budget anytime that we need to. So if we get anywhere throughout the school year and we see that we are way off, we can capture that capacity. We don't have to wait until May. We can do it statutorily anytime during the school year and bring it back to the board.
You may not be able to answer this, but why isn't West-MEC able to avail itself from the school facilities board fund?
It's just not in statute that we're.
It's not in statute. Okay. And
It's kind of interesting, the way the statutes are written in Arizona is when it's advantageous to one group, we're in there, and when it's not advantageous, we're not in there. Makes sense, but that's just kind of how it's kind of tongue in cheek, but that's kind of true.
as I understand, all state land proceeds, sale of state land proceeds go into the school facilities board.
I don't know how that's funded.
They go, so the current where education funding comes from, there's three pillars. It's mostly the general fund, but that the state trust land does come to West-MEC. There are three states with the state trust land: Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And so that's why we don't have high property taxes. Property taxes also fund us, state land trust, and then the general fund is the rest of it.
Typically what happens is if we go out to voter approved initiatives and we build buildings, the school facility boards typically won't support the maintenance of those buildings. That happened to me in my other district as well. We had built 2 school facilities using local funds, and those were not part, they wouldn't help us change HVAC units, when the roofs are gonna go out on those, then it's the school district's responsibility. So, you know, hopefully that's something that they look at in the future, but as of right now, that's why West-MEC's exempt from those funds.
So my question is, our fund that we reimburse districts for CTE education, grades 10 through 12. How much are we increasing that? And my big concern here is we really need to, some districts use that heavily just to provide salaries of teachers, and that's not what we intended it for. So I'd really like to see us not expand that and have other grants available. So it forces districts to provide equipment and other things through West-MEC instead of just paying for their CTE teachers. And then my second question is, with the bringing on of Agua Fria, our membership mix that goes to those districts will be heavily favored to Agua Fria. What does that do to our member districts allocation? Because all of a sudden their enrollment goes way up for West-MEC. That means money is gonna get pulled out from other districts. And are they aware that they could have, like Peoria could have a significant cut because instead of being 20%, they drop down to 15% of our enrollment?
Member Straka, I am trying to wrap my arms around the different functions and the different ways that West-MEC is funded, as well as funding our member districts. So that is something that we'll be looking at. I'm not sure, I think you may be referencing in your first question, the percentage of funds that go back to member
So
districts.
historically, we've had a fund and it started at $14 million a year. And it's now significantly, so my question is, what is it this year compared to last year?
I don't know that number yet, but we will know that number.
We can get you that number. I'll work. with
And then how with the, with our MSAs, how are we controlling that they're not putting this into teachers' salaries? Because the biggest offender is Paradise Valley, 90% of that money goes to teacher salaries.
We do have some of the different pots of money that's available, like but we're gonna try to increase those pots of money available. But let me clarify for something. So when we increase the central campus enrollment, there's 2 pots of money there. So that really doesn't affect the Agua Fria's satellite campus funding. That's a separate for all satellites and all central. So even though they would increase by, let's say 280 M or point times 0.75, that wouldn't affect their ability to generate the 0.25. So the number we're looking at right now, that number is going to change because we have to write a new IGA based on the Auditor General's performance review. So that'll be coming soon. So what that number is going to be yet. We weren't taking into consideration what you've already said, so yes.
So
that's going to
that's a
happen.
direct response to the Auditor General's report.
It doesn't specify a number, it just specifies you have to have something there.
Yeah.
And so we're making sure that says exactly what it says. As we've talked before and others have talked before, there's a ton of additional resources and support systems that we have in place to support our satellite districts. And keep in mind, we're right at the top in performance. So we got to walk a fine line to make sure we continue to support as well as continue to provide additional funding. Because what we want to do is we want to increase that number, but we also want to make sure the districts that are improving or increasing enrollment. It doesn't make sense to me to continue the same level of funding if you drop 150 students per year. So those are things that we're taking a look at to make sure it's fair and equitable across the board, as well as looking at a Paradise Valley where they may be utilizing the vast majority of their funds for salaries and benefits to look at other means or maybe some additional resources for a short period of time to get their CTE programs off the road. So believe me, you know I've heard you, so I know there's things that we're working on right now. So yes.
Do we have any guidance on how the money is to be used, or do we just usually dole out the money and then let them use it however they see fit?
I'll let Jared talk because he's got more experience in it than I do, but we tend to, go ahead.
Yeah, so our funding formula, to answer some of the questions, funding formula very specifically addresses, there is a pot of money, to Mr. Straka's point, that is a general pot that goes to them, but that general pot is also based on their enrollment, their satellite. So it is based on their satellite enrollment, so there's a general pot of money that is allocated every year, and that amount for this year has not been determined, as Dr. Spurgeon mentioned. We're right now going through those conversations to determine what that amount will be for this year. That will come in a new IGA to you before it goes to our member districts as well. So that number for this year has not been finalized. We usually finalize that by about October of the year. But that pot of money is then divided up based on their satellite enrollment as well as a percentage of their enrollment in central programs determines that pot. And then the other funding goes into specific categories for CTSO, equipment, industry equipment, credentials, and then innovative grants that are very specific to those grants. So we have put that formula and specific mechanisms in place to make sure the money's going to those right places, but there is a portion that is not designated for those areas.
So, but then you still didn't, I don't think, answer the question. So going back to, there's a portion that is affected by central programs. The Agua Fria campus, is that considered a central program?
Yes.
That is correct.
And so we're gonna add 500 kids to that program. And that multiplier for being in a central program weights towards Agua Fria, which means it changes the balance. Because all of a sudden you've changed the balance and by putting a school in their backyard, I've now added 500 kids to the central programs, which is a multiplier to that general fund. And so that's what I want to say is, how does that affect other districts? Have we looked at that?
But it's only based on applications, it's not based on enrollment, correct? It's the applications, it's
Yeah,
the
it's-
encouragement.
It's
People are
a-
encouraged to submit applications is the factor.
That's correct. And it's also a very small factor, an incentive. It was created at one time, you'll probably remember this, Mr. Straka, and the formula was created as an incentive to encourage districts to send students to our
The
central
central program.
campuses. And so it is a very small factor. So yes, it will have some implication to give potentially more to Agua Fria or other districts sending students to that central campus. But the bulk of it is based on their satellite. The vast majority of that formula is based on their satellite enrollment in programs is what's driving, because that's what's driving the 0.25 that's coming back to the
Keep in
district.
mind, as we build new facilities closer to high schools, each one of those districts would have that very,
Same
very
thing.
small. You know,
It's just, we have to be
advantage.
aware that this is the first one, so it favors Agua Fria. Agua Fria doesn't get a very big portion of that fund because they're a smaller district. If you could just humor me and maybe assume 90% is Agua Fria, what does that do to the funding this year versus last year? So how many kids are in that Agua Fria Academy? Do we know? What's the TART projected?
The projected enrollment for
Max would be
one for first year would be 168.
So 168. And after year two?
About 250.
So if we assume 90% of those kids are Agua Fria, does that change the formula funding much? That would be my question.
It would not, well, I'll answer it in a couple of ways. We know it's not 90% Agua Fria. It's really about 50% Agua Fria right now. There's a lot of Tolleson students that have applied for those programs, and so the percentage is not skewed towards just one district currently. So it would change it slightly, but not drastically at all, based on that small multiplier. And I can, in the formula, I could play with the numbers and get.
If you could just maybe favor then Agua Fria and Tolleson, and let's see what it does, because those aren't the big districts, and so does it give them, I'm okay if it gives them a little bit, but what I don't want to do is see a big impact to someone like Peoria that's very dependent on it, or Deer Valley.
And they'll have the advantage when we do the Peoria 101, Peoria will have a distinct advantage of probably 12 to 14 programs here. But the other thing I want to just throw out there as a philosophical statement is my whole philosophy is, as we continue to build our programs at central campuses, the higher the enrollment, the more we're able to release our satellite funding to help them continue to build more programs, support more programs. So I'm trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. So we want to give them more money, but we want to make sure we have money coming in and not give them money and put ourselves in a hole.
And that's exactly it. I don't want to give them too much because we need to pay for our programs.
And there's a
So we're on
timeline.
the same page.
Well, if we look at this from a long-term perspective, the Alfrea district model actually, in the long run, is helpful to us overall.
Yes.
And it solves a very big problem, which is the transportation issue. So if other schools and or districts say, okay, our Frias is working really well, why don't we build one at this location in underutilized buildings that we're not currently occupying because our enrollment is down. So let's make use of those. I mean, I'm just, thinking out loud here, but I think that model may be very beneficial in the long run to us. We may have to.
To build one of those, we're talking probably $30 million for a small one. Is that a fair?
23 to 27 probably, depends on what programs you put in there. It tends to vary. But the other thing to keep in mind is I did a calculation of all the bond projects. And when all the buildings were built and the maximum programs and sections are available, it'll take us over probably 6,000 students as a central campus, which is more than double than when I started. And again, that's more money coming in, but you always have to monitor the costs associated with running those, which we've talked about, things in which we can actually do things more efficiently in the smaller academies to still get the same bang for the buck.
So this is Robert. I had a question. So the question on the budget, when I heard that we're still, have we made our accounts current on our budget? Are we pretty much all paid up from where we need to be? Is there anything in arrears that we need to be looking at?
Member Garcia, we don't have anything in arrears. We have an encumbrance period, which is 2 months from the old fiscal year to pay everything current for that fiscal year, but through my analysis, we don't have anything in arrears.
Okay. And my second question is on the projection for Agua Fria, have we looked at so we got open enrollment, or we're gonna have or we had enrollment going for a while, but we have current students also that we already know are going to attend the school. Have we predicted how many students that aren't currently enrolled that may possibly be interested in enrolling? Kind of like a growth analysis, if you will.
I can answer that would be more of an educational guess than anything else probably. Because Mr.
Yeah.
Garcia, typically we'll get between 5,000 and 6,000 applications, and we really have about 1,800, 2,000 open spots at West-MEC. So there are several thousand students that apply to West-MEC that will never get in each year.
Correct. So if we have every seat filled at Agua Fria versus what we have right now registered, what number is that?
One total would be 168. What would be the max if they were?
Next year.
But the max full capacity will be what, just under 200? Yeah, and
So
those programs will be full unless for some reason after day 10, someone drops out and we can't replace them.
So pretty much we're maximizing that
Yes.
opportunity of being there. Okay, that's what I was going at. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, all the academies are going to be in such a general location, especially if we have to find some hard to fill or high opportunity programs. We have the ability to go right to the high schools that are just across the fields to be able to fill those programs, which makes it just an absolute blessing in disguise for us and for the students.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Scott.
All right. What's that?
Call to the community
Oh,
for any questions before we close it.
yes, okay. Any additional questions from the public or any questions from the public? Second call,
Outside of us.
third call for questions from the public. No one. Okay, thank you. All right. This concludes the public hearing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. French.
Moving on to the regular meeting. Calling regular meeting to order. The West-MEC Governing Board. And first item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. And for today, we'd just like to ask that you keep in mind in your prayers the victims and families of the flash flooding in Texas and Mexico. And also keep in your prayers all the personnel involved in the search and rescue.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll move. We will adopt this as presented.
Okay,
Hey,
all right. Motion in a second. First, we have to vote on it and then, oh, sorry, no,
Discussion.
yeah, discussion.
yeah, I would actually wanted to pull things from the agenda.
We will not discuss.
Well, pull it and then discuss it.
We'll discuss.
Oh, you have
Okay,
a consent agenda.
Yeah,
That
this
we're not down to that yet.
yeah,
Sorry, okay. Oh,
yeah, that's for the,
that's, I got too excited.
Got excited.
so we got a motion in a second.
The agenda, yes.
Oh, there it is.
Motion passes. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with summary of current events with Superintendent Dr. Spurgeon.
Thank you, Chairman Ramirez. Just had a meeting yesterday, had a group of Board of Regents from the Southwest Indian Polytech Institute, and they were from the state of Oklahoma, New Mexico, and from Arizona. Adam Begay is the president of the Board of Regents, and so he and I had a relationship that started a couple of years ago. He's looking to bring a West-MEC style CTE program to the Polytech Institutes in these three places, as well as other places across the country. And he really favors our program. So I had the chance to meet with, I think there were 8 Board of Regent members yesterday in person, and there were probably 4 or 5 more online. So we got a chance to meet and do a West-MEC update overview and projects and talk about our process, our procedures, our funding, how we design our programs, how we determine our programs, and those things. And it was really kind of an interesting conversation because I got a chance to sit and listen to the Board of Regents talk about higher education and the 4 universities and their challenges and things like that. So I had the opportunity to chime in and maybe give a little bit of advice and things they might want to, think about as they kind of move forward. And so I was very excited to be able to do that. The tour went fantastic. And so they're hoping to come back. Adam's coming back, I think, in August, and the group is already making plans to come back to see the new facilities when they get ready to come in. So we're very excited that they're here, that they were here, and that they were able to get some things done and do a quick tour. So next thing is I attended the West-MEC Healthcare Summit, which was the West-MEC Healthcare Summit. And I brought some information back because there was a gentleman who talked about how the number of degree seeking students has been on the decline, and how the number of students seeking the certifications and certificates and licensure has been on the uptick. And he gave some statistics for the group about CTE, and I thought this was great information about the value add that we bring to our nation and our state and our region. And as you know, the graduation rate for the state of Arizona on average, I think, is around 78%, 77, 78%. And the question was, what is the high school graduation rate for the CTE students nationwide? The answer is 93% as a graduation rate. So the next piece of information says, what percent of students who take 2 CTE credits enroll in post-secondary opportunities? 75% is the students who enroll, who takes 2 CTE classes. And the last thing he said, says, what is the college completion rate for CTE concentrators? And it's up to 80%. So the students that leave us that have a faster way forward with some credits behind them, with a purpose and a mission and an engagement, 80% of those students that go through CTE complete their post-secondary opportunities, which I thought was fantastic information. So that was the West-MEC Healthcare Summit. Had a couple of, Mr. Chairman Ramirez and Vice Chairman Garcia and Mr. Molina We had a little breakfast and did a tour of the Agua Fria Academy, Trades Academy, so you got a chance to see the updates and project that's going on. Yesterday, I think there were probably over 100+ folks working on that right now. And the timeline right now, Mike, I think we're probably set to about, we're about 2 weeks after the start of school, so August 15th is about the day they have everything open. So our students will probably be in the Agua Fria High School in a couple of spaces to do their OSHA 10 training and some other things first before they actually step in. Because we want to make sure that the labs are ready to go and nothing's going to happen if students are around and workers are still there or whatever. But that in and of itself is about a 4-week turnaround, because we first thought APS has done a great job of coming out. We first thought we were going to be about mid-September, because APS, you have to get on a list. And yet, once you get on a list, then they determine which work crews are going to come out. And then when you actually are going to get your power, then they got to come pull that. So they were out pulling some lines for us today. And we're very thankful that August 15th or before is when we're going to get to move in to Agua Fria Northeast Campus project. We should be in great shape working that through. So we're very excited about that. Next piece is our very own Mr. Robert Garcia has now become the cheerleader and the leader of the new SIP group, which is called the Student Industry Partnership, which is the old AEEC, which is the Arizona Education Economic Commission. So he's picked up the leadership of that group now, and it's still working on building business and industry partnerships, apprenticeships, and work-based learning visas. So thank you, Mr. Garcia, for picking up that. I don't know if thank you is necessary, but you probably wouldn't say thank you or you're welcome or anything like that.
Thank you, Scott, for mentioning it.
So, but thank you for doing that, by the way. So the last thing that I will mention is that, or two things. June the 13th, there were several of you. Thank you for coming to the aviation maintenance recognition ceremony. That's always a fantastic opportunity as kind of the last thing before summer actually begins. And then the last two things is the first day for aesthetics and aviation maintenance is July 28th at the end of this month. And then the rest of our programs, their first day will be July the 31st. So with that being said,
Thank you. Move on to the governing board, and we'll start with Mr. Garcia, since he's on the line.
Nothing. Scott covered all the highlights. I really did nothing else other than that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Steins?
I don't have any
Any updates?
Look at the agenda, the communications department is certainly lifted the bar a little bit higher, haven't they, with all the activity, my goodness sakes.
Mr. Molina?
Just wanna, tag on to what Superintendent Spurgeon was talking about there on those statistics from that gentleman that spoke at that conference. One thing that I would like to see is a percentage of CTE students who go on to a 4-year college and graduate. What's their employability versus your standard university student? How many of them are actually, because I know that there's a lot of college students that are graduating in 5-6 years and having to have 1 or 2 degrees and still can't get a job.
Can't find the job yet.
yeah, that'd be interesting.
Okay, Ms. Bosom?
On June 5th, I attended the product showcase for Grow Lab. And that is something that I contacted Laura Haney. And she's the director of curriculum and instruction, and I didn't want to take up any teachers' spots or anything like that, so I asked her if I could attend. And she told me yes, and I am so glad that I was able to see exactly what our coaches do with our teachers, because I learned so much and how critical that program is, where it's just one-on-one and it's in real time. So it's not like you get to visit them once a week or once a month or whatever it is. It's online. It keeps track of all your conversations, everything that is going on between the teacher and the coach. And it keeps, once they've made a move, or they've completed an agenda or whatever, it keeps track of that and sends out little, happy things so that they know that they have completed something. But it's just really great to see that, we're working like at that level with our teachers to make them better. And I think it just makes what West-MEC is, it's just a huge success. One of the things that Grow Lab was talking about is they are going to start working with that
have that kind of a platform for our teachers to students. And, you know, I'm not sure exactly where we're gonna be at with that, you know, program here at West-MEC, especially when we have AI. But I could see that being a huge improvement for K through 12, you know, you know, working with a lot of the proficiency scores that, you know, that some of these students have. You know, I think it's gonna be a huge plus for something like that. So it was a lot of fun. I have to give kudos to, Nicole Albright, Charles Moreland, Dana Hess, and Matt Continent, and of course Laura. You know, they were very welcoming, and it was great. I was just really happy to attend that. And then again, I did attend that Central Campus Aviation recognition ceremony, and that was a lot of fun too. That was it.
Thank you. Ms. Wiley?
I did the aviation event. I don't think there was anything else at this.
All right. Strong, good.
I can't think of anything.
No, okay, all right. Yeah, and I was just gonna say, yeah, it was exciting going to the Agua Fria campus, walking the grounds and seeing how quickly it's coming along. I drove by the southeast campus too, but it looks like they're still doing the
Yeah, the footage.
foundation and footing and all that, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next call to the public. Anyone, any comments from, do we have anyone? No one on the list, okay. I'll do my first call to the public. Any comments from the public? Second call. Third call for a public comment. None, okay. Hearing on, we move on to recognitions. Guy. Mr. Jerry Guy, come on up.
Meeting, as members of the board, Dr. Spurgeon, happy to come up tonight and celebrate our communications department. You're gonna get to hear from our communications department later in the agenda and also awesome accomplishments in their update, but wanted to highlight some recent awards that they won. So recently, our communications team, led by Mr. Chris Cook and under his leadership, won 6 national awards at the National School Public Relations Association. So it's PR. So you can see those areas, those categories that they won those and were recognized for in our annual report, our branding, the news release, social media, video series, and our website. And as highlighted there as well, they were one of only 9 school districts in Arizona that won these awards on the national level. So really, our team is at the top of the top, which is no surprise to us because we see the great work that they do all the time, and you guys get to say the great work that they do, but it's fantastic to see their work recognized on a national level through these awards. So we wanted to make sure to recognize Chris and the team, and again, you'll get to celebrate with them in a little bit when you get to hear from them directly.
I think right now, actually.
Yes.
Segue.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So how many did we win or did they win last year? I remember there quite a few, right?
Well, so we've recognized previously, so at the state level, they've been recognized for several awards, and this is now the national level. So.
Yeah, so every year we nominate ourselves for the states, and I think last year's state was 4 or 5, and then nationally, it's 6. So
How much?
6.
6?
Yeah,
Alright.
this past.
Oh, okay. 9 this year.
And there's multiple kind of nominations that you can do, but these are the ones that we feel have, like a lot of bang for the buck. The annual reports, the videos, those kind of things, social media, so.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the formal introduction or just start? I think I'm next, so.
Yeah, yeah, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Chris Cook.
Thank you.
Executive Director of Communications.
Chairman affairs, members of the governing board.
See what else I have to read off of here.
We're excited to kind of give a short little glimpse in the communications year. Had a banner year. Really thanks to this team behind me right here. Stellar group of professionals. We're missing one person right here to be Jay Lynn, our administrative assistant. She's the glue, and Lord knows I need a lot of glue to keep myself together, the communications team, but she'd be right here smiling, and she definitely is a great person on our team as well. But this team right here is stellar. We're gonna showcase just a few things that we've done this year. First of all, you can see our design projects, 537 projects we completed this year. You can see the growth since 1920, 190 all the way up to 537. This obvious because of our, expansion of campuses, employees, any kind of design projects or tickets. This is one example right there. You see it's a flyer, but these could be website updates. These could be taking videos, Sean, be taking photos, doing social media, those kind of things too. So happy to share all the great things that are happening in the district, and you can see our growth there. Also, we had 107 events that we covered. That's pretty much almost kind of like every single day we're out and about doing things, but this is also, a testament to the great things that are happening on campuses in our district as well. So you can see some of the ones that are listed there are some of the events that, just to give you an example of some of them. The ones in white are the ones that West-MEC Communications team had a major hand in. The Experience Orange, West-MEC handled that ourselves, and then some of the other groundbreakings and ribbon cutting. Obviously, these are all team efforts with campuses as well, but we were kind of helping coordinate those as well. So great to be able to showcase this and share on social media as well. So those are the events that were covered. Next up, I really want to give the team, because they're kind of behind the scenes, just doing the great work. I want to kind of give them a chance to get their face here, and so other folks can see them not only here, but also, on YouTube right now. So I'm going to have Grant, our communications specialist, come up and talk about our media outreach. Grant, take it away.
Good afternoon. Thanks for giving us a chance to present today. I'm going to start with kind of our media and the media outlets that we have achieved media mentions or placements in. A lot of the notable local outlets such as the Arizona Republic, AZ Big Media, and all of our Daily Independents. Our biggest, most prestigious probably placement of the year was in the New York Times. We kind of talked about it in last year's board meeting that it was coming up, and I think it was last July when it actually hit. So obviously that is a very big deal to be in such a prestigious outlet. And one of the cooler things that I think we achieved this year as well is the other orange highlighted name that I won't try to pronounce is a French TV outlet. So we actually had a broadcast segment that aired in French, and just kind of the West-MEC footprint went internationally this year. So I think that's a really cool thing. The reporter got this.
Who speaks French?
I'm sorry?
So who speaks French?
No, so it's a miracle that we were able to.
A lot of headphones.
Yeah, the reporter got to go up to our Southwest campus, speak with a student and an instructor, and got like a mini tour of the Southwest campus. So I thought that was really cool. It's just kind of a testament not only to us, but all the people that make West-MEC so great and on top of mind for just being a great CTED to report on.
Was that the one I did as well? I think that when they came to that seems like 10 years ago.
And this next slide here is I use Critical Mention, which is a media tracking software to track all of our media mentions and placements. And we do a competitor analysis every year to assess how we're doing against other notable CTEDs in Arizona and nationally. And our placements more than doubled the next highest in Butler Tech.
Yeah.
And I mentioned
Did we do more? We almost do more than all of the others put together.
Yeah, for sure.
It'd be a lot harder if West-MEC wasn't such a great seat and easy to report.
And then also singing some more praises to Grant. It's very difficult because you never know when somebody is, you can pitch things and right, it's up to them if they're going to accept or, place us or whatever. But specifically this year, around the August all the way to November is that election kind of period. So they are not looking to have any kind of stories about education, right? They're looking for other stories. So for us, I was always a little concerned. I'm like, this year, I'm like, we're probably not gonna have as high of some numbers just because it's difficult to do that. But kudos to our team to be able to kind of raise the level and be able to share some more engaging stories. So thank you. Right.
Great job.
And also a product of CTE and in the Buckeye District, as Trey Foothills took sports medicine and another criminal
Psychology.
It's fabulous.
Next up, we'll have our social media specialist, Marisol, come up here. And fun fact about her also, she is from Tolleson and was in a CTA program and was a state CTSO officer as well. Marisol, take it away.
So good evening, everyone. As Chris introduced me, I'm the social media specialist here at the district and just happy to be back in the CTE space after it's been a long time ever since high school. So starting off with social media, it was a record-breaking year. I wanted to start with our impressions metrics. So West-MEC's content was viewed over 6.4 million times across all of our 6 social media platforms. So this is largely due in part to my position being transitioned to full-time, which led to a greater scale of content being able to be produced, as well as just my incredible and really supportive team who helped me just be able to produce content that related to any articles, stories, YouTube videos. Just I was able to tell the story of West-MEC just because of what they produced and what I produced.
It's outstanding, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Whole team, outstanding content.
Thank you. As for engagement, we've doubled our social interactions over the past year, which is really rewarding because it's not only important to have impressions and exposure, but having people take the time to interact and connect with us on social media. It's especially hard in this digital age where everything kind of just moves so fast paced. So to take a time to leave a comment, leave a like is really, just really nice to see from the social media stance. And then to the right are some notable features and mentions we've had on social media. As you can see, a large amount of these features come from our business and industry partners, which shows how important these connections are not only for our students' career development, our community, but as well as our digital audiences, since they want to talk about us on their own time as well. So that's social media.
Yeah, great job.
And then finally, last but not least, Sean Harris, our media production specialist, also from Deer Valley District, so clean sweep from member districts. Sean, take it away.
Thank you. So my job is very firmly behind the camera, so my memorization is not my strong suit. So Chris has asked me to share a little bit about the 31 videos completed over the past 9 months. Which the one in white is the From Classroom to Career video that's currently on our YouTube. Features Mia, who is an alumni of the West-MEC veterinary program in Virginia, who was a current vet student. They asked each other questions about their experiences, both being in the program and life working in the industry after graduation. My absolute favorite thing about what I do is the ability to give other people like this a platform to share their stories. And I believe that videos like this and the one that you're about to see about real people, real experiences, and in their own words are what have staying power and what makes attending West-MEC relatable and attainable to other students. So I think we're gonna play a video. This was actually, I believe, the first video that I made for West-MEC almost 10 months ago. It features Genesis, who couldn't be here. She was supposed to be here, but she couldn't be here tonight. Really bright automotive student at the Northwest campus, talking about her experience and earning credentials at West-MEC.
My name is Genesis Sandino, and I'm in the automotive technology programs, and this is my second year. So the credential that we're getting is our ASC certifications, Automotive Service Excellence. My junior year last year, we took 4 or 5 different ASC tests, and every time I passed, I just felt so proud and accomplished because I realized I was like, okay, waking up early every day to come to school and learn has been worth it. All the countless hours of studying have been worth it. It can help me whenever it comes to a certain pay rate or holding a certain position as an entry-level technician. The more credentials I get, it's like kind of getting more money. Having an ASC credential could show my future employer the knowledge I obtained within a certain skill level revolved around the industry and my hard work paying off as I've been studying in class and working hard to pass my test. West-MEC has definitely helped with my confidence a lot. As you know, in the auto industry, there aren't very many women involved. I remember when I first joined, like I was really like nervous and scared and skeptical about how I was going to learn and the environment. But I've grown to be very confident and very responsible, and I just feel like because of West-MEC, the day that I graduate, I'm not gonna worry about what comes next in life.
Yeah, never have to worry about Sean when he puts together videos, they're always amazing. See if I can try to get to the next slide somehow. There we go. So yeah, as we were saying, the Genesis was supposed to be here. She, actually, we followed up, best laid plans, all those kind of things, but she's having her wisdom teeth, taken out, I guess. So we didn't think it'd be nice to have her come in here. But I guarantee if she was here, she would say that obviously the culture that was established at the Northwest campus with Holly and Mike and April, she would talk about that. She obviously would talk about the power of getting those credentials and how it gave her confidence. She would really talk about how she got her tribe of folks in the program too. And she'd probably just talk about how excited she is to have these credentials and move on into the real world. And probably also say the communications team was absolutely amazing. She probably would say that too. Would be her ending thing, but that's it. So thanks for your time. Thank you also for the board members that do like and engage and post and share. We see you. We appreciate it as well. And thank you to all the folks back there that make our job easy to be able to share stories.
Facebook a lot and see it. Are you putting it on other sites too?
Correct.
Like TikTok and LinkedIn?
That's like my $1 million question, because I've heard all these different, hey, you'll get more engagement if you share it with a comment in the first hour it's posted. How much of that is accurate? What is it that, what could we do if we see that? That is it sharing, is it liking, is it adding, because like that someone said, adding a comment doesn't. It's engagement, but it doesn't put it in front of other
You
people.
want them to tell us how to be techie?
I want that, how we can help them get more above that
visibility,
6.4 million.
More
I also
interactions.
think you're saying, I mean, the engagement piece of sharing is huge. Not just liking, but putting comments, those kind of things are big, but do you want to add?
Yeah, I think something that largely contributed just to our numbers was definitely the sharing element. I'm behind the scenes always trying to connect with our students and commenting on any post that they have. And that's not even including all of our program accounts where our students are taking lead on doing all their social media items. So they're not only on their program accounts sharing to their personal communities, their campuses, other students, friends, and so much more. But just I think from our side, just being able to just a repost or reshare, a story share, I think has helped extremely. Because I'm able to see the metrics of what everybody else is doing and just being able to see, like I said, that it's being resent and reshared and seeing that there's new people commenting or liking on the posts that you all share on your individual platforms, it leads to that kind of lead generation, which has been extremely beneficial when it comes to especially our industry and business partners who, because they see your post and they're like, oh, let's talk more about West-MEC, and then it just leads to an awkward.
And you attended West-MEC as a student?
I was at Westview High School and I was a part of a fashion program.
Yeah, she puts us to shame all the time, every single day.
Yeah.
For sure, but those are, that kind of question too, we can also like look into because we want to see if it's fact versus fiction, some of those kind of things.
And that's
as
why I'm
well.
asking.
Yeah.
So as an example, I was at camp with the high schoolers and I posted the video of them pulling the bus. And no big deal. And for whatever reason, I got 1,018 views. I normally get 12. And when I did the analytics, it's like 80% was outside of my network. What drove, what did I do differently that drove that? What can we do to help get stuff outside of the network for more people to see? Because people that normally see our stuff, great, but how can we push it outside? That's kind of my question.
Sharing is definitely huge. It's the not just liking, but commenting, those kind of things, because the algorithm will start getting that out into more impressions and those kind of things out to folks throughout the social media. So you're doing a lot of the good things that we typically haven't seen from board members in the past, so we do appreciate it.
So if you could just tell us fact versus fiction so that I don't want to do stuff that is not helping and I'd rather do something that is.
Well, bad because we got waiting lists on all of our programs, so it's like we want to increase the visibility.
It is.
We have a bond coming.
What are all the platforms?
So we currently operate on Instagram, TikTok, X, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube.
And she's also, she mentioned it a little bit, but she manages every single CTSO social media account
Wow.
for the district. So how many, like, I'm getting emails because we change the passwords every single year. So I like the other day, like I just all of a sudden like had, 85 emails just that popped up in a second. I'm like, oh, she must be changing some passwords. So how many CTSO accounts approximately do you manage?
Roughly around 32, but we're still growing with the.
So I mean, it's a big thing to monitor, set up the accounts, make sure they have passwords, they fill out all the documentation. Just because we've got to keep it, the principals do a good job of around that and making sure they understand all the protocols for social media. So we give them a voice, and that's important because then they get it out to their networks, like you're mentioning, that we might not necessarily do. And it gives them also the opportunity to get some experience, promoting and getting leadership opportunities.
So I knew something changed because it's like those little short videos where you get little pictures, you get like 4 or 5. So I knew something changed. That must be where you're pulling some of that stuff, that content from then. Yeah.
Help with the viewership as well, just seeing different features on platforms, like I mentioned, stories. So even though you're not grasping the full content piece while you're scrolling through your feed, even like a short 4 to 5 seconds of like, wonder what that is, let me look back and look at it. That has helped with us drastically, and that's what helped boost viewership as.
I have a question about the tickets too. Do you track rework?
We track, sorry,
Rework.
What's
I
that?
don't know if we do.
So somebody asks for a ticket of something and they're like, oh, hey, I noticed that this was misspelled. Can you fix it? And then you have to, on the document, correct it, or they change the wording.
No, I would not say, there might be some things and that is, I wouldn't say no, that there's a lot of issues with tickets like that of reworks. It's really for a website update, hey, can you update this PDF? Can you change this date? If it's a flyer, hey, like the one I showed you up there, we want to start having flyers for work-based learning. Here's the content. And we have a very robust ticket system that's set up by IT. So basically it's tracked, they get emails and we can give status updates and those kind of things too. So there's not a lot of issues where we're getting like, a lot of these are duplicate tickets, so to speak, if that's kind of where you're.
And that's, well, because that's what I'd like to, as your demand increases, the general rule for rework is 1% to 2%. So it should be 10 in a year, based on those numbers.
Our staff is pretty smart. They do a pretty
Well,
good job of giving us. stuff
I know your staff is, but if somebody says, hey, I forgot to add this sentence in there, that would be rework. I'm not worried about you guys. I'm worried about someone coming back and saying, hey, I forgot to add this, or.
Yeah, nothing where it's been something where I would say it's a huge amount of time where we need to have a conversation. Everybody here is pretty good. And they understand the system now. A lot of folks have been here for a long time, just like me. And so we meet every single year towards in February with every single department. And we talk about what jobs you want for this particular upcoming year. We also talk about if there's anything else you need for this fiscal year. So we're able to have these kind of check-in points throughout the year to kind of get alignment with projects for the upcoming year. So we're understanding some of the stuff that pops up just pops up, right? Like there's always kind of big things that happen. So those things, but I wouldn't say that's a major concern on our end.
I want to make a comment. I really like the idea of the current student and the one that's now working and out in industry. I think that they're interviewing each other, right? Yeah.
Correct.
I think that's something that's gonna bring a lot of value, and I think it's gonna excite and interest a lot of students. That's a great way to highlight basically our programs and then also the success that they can have after the program.
Yeah, it was a good, a new one that Sean put together, and I think it will
Yeah.
have some legs. Just, it's always hard, right, to get it's easy to get the student. It's always that alumni person because it worked, right?
Mhm.
And so that's always hard, but Sean did a great job.
Yeah, that's a great concept. I like that.
Yeah, Chris, I had something. Great job. Yeah, I know that you and I have spoken a lot about outreach and the importance of it. I think this is very, very good, and I applaud you for doing that and having your team, design in a way that can help us really get the message out and start attracting some companies and updating some parents, because parents are out there looking at those sites as well. And that's good. Yeah, you and I had a lot of conversations.
We do. Thanks for your feedback, and thanks again to the team here and the folks behind me, and Dr. Spurgeon too as well, for making our job easy by going out and speaking and sharing the good words, and also Maryland Student Services, the recruiters. We're lucky to have them as well. So definitely, just like every other department, it's a great team effort.
Great.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cook.
Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Legislative and business update partnership update, Ms. Megan Mills, Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening, President Ramirez, governing board members, Superintendent Dr. Spurgeon, and our West-MEC community. Last month, I presented 3 different bills that were actioned by the governor into law relative to education. Since the June update that I provided, the legislative session has concluded. I did want to share some new numbers with you. When the legislative session was in session, there were 439 bills that were passed through the House and the Senate for the governor's consideration. Of those, she signed 265 and vetoed 174. Today, there's 0 of those remaining. So I'm going to look with you at the new laws that are relative to education that are going to have some sort of impact on our operations here at West-MEC. To help you understand the variety of laws we'll be looking at, I've categorized them into education, reporting, notices, and safety. I want to again draw your attention that there were over 265 signed bills, so I've only selected a few that I thought you should have attention on tonight. The first one is one of the few that is reached an emergency clause. Related to September 11th, the district is required to teach age-appropriate instruction to our students on September 11th. This is one of the only few laws that is effective immediately. Because the legislative session ended on June 27th, the remaining laws that are in effect won't actually have any required changes by us until late September. And so that is the one item that we certainly need to address. And I've been working with my teammate, Jarrett Guy, to ensure that we're in compliance with this new law. In terms of reporting, there are 3 items that I wanted to call your attention to. There is a new mandate that does require board members to report any sexual misconduct to law enforcement. Additionally, the district can be held, or public entities can be held civilly liable for any conduct that is not reported, or if we don't do thorough background checks. Additionally, we are allowed now to share information with the Department of Education relative to misconduct that may be leading to disciplinary action. This is different than how that information was handled previously. Moving on to notices and safety, we are now required to provide parents with information about parent engagement and their rights as parents. That's something that is likely going to be incorporated into our handbook. We also, in our handbook, will need to include information about swimming safety and water safety by providing educational resources within our student enrollment packets. And then safety was a big ticket item. And so you'll see HB 2074 here. They've basically allocated state funding to help us support with security related things, whether that's technology, staff training, cameras, gates. And then they've associated with that mandated reports that need to occur every 3 and 5 years to ensure that our schools in fact are safe. This also includes, just as a side note, I've put it in italics so that you know it may be applicable to other districts, but not necessarily to us. But for those that do have school resource officers, they are now allowed to use off-duty police officers to be those school resource officers. And in addition to that, if school member districts do have school resource officers, they do also have to have a special training for working with a population of students that have special needs. In addition to safety related to physical security, there is also a requirement for each school to have an AED, an automated external defibrillator. With that in mind, the state has set aside $500,000 to be able to assist school districts in acquiring those AEDs for schools. So next steps, as I highlighted in June, we will be taking this information before our legal counsel and the trust. They'll help us assess the impacts that this would make to West-MEC on our operations, on our funding, and on our policies. If there's any policy related changes that we would suggest or recommend to the governing board, you would receive those. Again, keeping in mind that this could happen relatively quickly because we do have to have some revisions to our operations, finance, or policy by the deadline of September 25th, 2025. While I'm up here, I also wanted to provide an overview on the Proposition 403 and 406. Those are the ballot initiatives that the governing board unanimously voted to put in front of voters this November. For clarification purposes, I wanted to call out that Proposition 403 is the item that's tied to the $415 million bond ask. And Proposition 406 is relative to the land that we'd like, land and buildings that we'd like to lease, exchange, or sell. To help you get an idea of the facts behind those two propositions, the communications team has partnered with strategic partnerships to put together this fact sheet. The first page talks about those two propositions. On the back side, it shows you what the future projects will be. I provided each of you with a handful of copies so that you can get these out as you see them. In addition to putting together the fact sheet, we've been hard at work in collaboration with the finance team. I wanted to give a shout out to our new CFO, Ryan French, his administrative assistant, Paula Stevens, to Chris Cook for his help on the communications side, and to my teammate, Alyssa Scrow. There's a lot of legalese that we have to do to make sure that the election goes according to the law. And we've been preparing ballot language, the voter pamphlet verbiage, putting in newspaper articles and notices, and have made sure that all the legal requirements for this election have been met. It's a huge and can be stressful undertaking to make sure each and every one of those deadlines is met. And so I appreciate my colleagues' assistance with that. Also underway, we're looking to get out the fact sheet. We're going to be printing multiple stacks of these so that we can give them out at the various community presentations that we give. We have a schedule of presentations that between now and the election, Dr. Spurgeon and I will be attending to make sure that the community is well aware of what the funds for Prop 403 and what the properties for 406 would entail, how we plan to use those. We'll continue to work on our webpage development, dedicating a special webpage just to both of these propositions. And then we'll be meeting with our staff to let them know, hey, it's an election cycle. As a staff member and as a community official, there are some do's and don'ts. So when we return to our schools and have our welcome back week on July 24th, 28th, 29th, and 31st, we'll be providing that training to our staff so that they know what to say and what not to say as a staff member representing our district.
I have a question. So will this information appear on the ballot, or on the booklet?
There's a condensed, more legal version of this that
Okay.
goes on the ballot. I'd be happy to send you the information that we've put onto the ballot.
Okay.
With that, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
On the election, what are the do's and don'ts for board members? Specifically, I know we can't use our West-MEC email to promote the bond. What are, what are we gonna do? What can we do? What shouldn't we do? If someone asks us a question, can we call staff? Hey, I have a question about the bond. I don't want to do something that is on the front page in the wrong way.
And
So
And just to add on that, can we get that guidance in an email? Yes,
Absolutely.
please. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll send with Dr. Spurgeon's permission, an email to Sherry to advise you on those do's and don'ts. It'll be a compilation of slides that outlines the do's and don'ts. As a past board member myself, what you should be aware of as a private citizen, you're entitled to your rights and you can speak freely as a private citizen. If you're in the official capacity as a school board member, you're limited to what you can say. As staff are as well limited to what we can say in our official capacity. When you're speaking from a board member perspective, it should be to the facts only. When you're speaking as a member of the public, when you're not at the dais, let's say, then you can speak from your own personal experience and personal opinion.
What constitutes speaking as a board member? Just being up here on the dais?
I'm not an attorney, but my advice would be, if you're attending any West-MEC event as a board member, in the capacity as a board member representing the district, you're on
I'm on the clock.
West-MEC's clock.
Yeah.
Just the facts.
I did have a question
Error
regarding
on
the
caution.
HB 2074. Do we have any SROs within West-MEC? And I mean,
We just have working relationships and agreements with the city officials and police officers.
based on our selectivity of students, it seems like we don't really have that need, certainly not at this point. But I know that's,
And if these particular laws are not relevant to West-MEC now, they may be in the future. So it may be something that at a later date we could consider. And if so, we would need to be mindful of the laws surrounding.
okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vision policies.
Right, yes. Sure. Revision to policies pursuant to the trust model, policy recommendations. First reading, Ms. Kathy Mace, Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening, Chairman Ramirez, members of the governing board, Dr. Spurgeon. There are 5 policies that are being presented to you this evening as a first read. I will just briefly go over those, and of course, those are open for discussion with the governing board in preparation for the second read, which will be at the August meeting, and then it will go to final adoption. So you've already heard some of the legislation behind some of these recommended changes from Ms. Mills, who is working down at the legislature and getting us up to speed with the actual laws. But the trust has already started putting some of this information up for you all's discussion so that we are ready in case these laws are implemented. So I'm just gonna go through the 5 different recommendations to policy. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Looking at the policy number 1401, parents' legal guardian rights and education. There were only a few grammatical changes there. And please keep in mind, we do post the parental guardian rights handbook on our website. And it is under the administration's tab. So if you ever want to take a look at it in its entirety, that we are following the statute and the reporting requirements for that currently. So the recommended change here is just a brief grammatical change, and that handbook is available to the public and to parents on the website. Next is policy 3403, which is technology. And as you heard from Ms. Mills, one of the acts that the legislature felt very compelled to implement is just to put a fence around students' access to cellular telephones while they're in the classroom. I think all of our instructors do unofficially have their own policies when they're in the classroom in terms of their expectations when students do have their cell phones. However, this does operationalize it, puts it in statute just to give it some consistency amongst the districts. So we have had some discussions with the student services and the CNI staff as to how we might frame this language in our student handbook, because we don't want to make it too restrictive. And actually, the statute addresses that as well. So some of the recommendations or things that they would approve the use of cell phones for would be things like if there's an emergency, if it's used for instructional purposes, if the student's parent is trying to get a hold of them, that sort of thing. So if it's for that reason, then obviously it would be a good idea for the students to have access to the cell phones, but they still will have to honor the students, the teacher wishes when they're actually in the classroom. The other thing that the technology statute brings to bear is just about students' access to social media platforms. So again, the recommendation is if it's for instructional purposes, okay, that might be appropriate. But students shouldn't be in the classroom on TikTok, on Instagram, and that sort of thing. So that's in there as well.
So how do we control them being on TikTok on their cell phone? I mean, it's not like a teacher can, what are you doing? 30 kids. Why I appreciate what the legislature is trying to do. As a board member, my question is, how do we enact this?
Well, as an instructor, I mean, if you're doing what you need to do and you keep your eye on the kids, you kind of know when the kids are looking down, they're not actively engaged. Some teachers may even have rules where they say, if I see it 3 times, I'm gonna ask you to keep it in my desk. So I think it's monitoring the students, and then keep in mind the district also has filters in place so that we can control if they're on a district network, some of the things that they're accessing. But to answer your question, board member Schroeder, it's usually the teacher that's monitoring that knows that. And I think a lot of it's.
As a former, as a former instructor, one of the ways that I was able to monitor what a student was doing, granted the students I had were all college grads, but even they act up sometimes.
They're the worst.
But as you keep repeatedly calling on them to answer your questions, you keep picking on them, pretty soon they're getting the idea that you're watching me, so I need to put this away. And yeah, after a certain amount of time, then you just take it away from them.
So then on the district websites, we would as a whole, they can't get on social media platforms.
Well, as to your point, you can't control everything, but again, that's part of the monitoring and expectations that the instructor should be setting with their students. Any other questions? Okay, next, as Ms. Mills had reported in her last presentation, there have been changes to the mandatory reporting or recommended changes to the mandatory reporting policy, which now includes governing board members. So the expectation is that if you all notice inappropriate behavior, or if you're aware of anything that could create a safety issue with students, you need to please inform either Dr. Spurgeon, the chairman, myself, or the administrator, so that we can follow up and make sure that our kids are safe. As Megan had reported, it's no longer just enough to report it to a safety or a SRO, which we don't have anyway. But we really have to make sure that we document, that we inform the appropriate authorities if there is some suspicion that a child is being harmed or abused. And for HR, if it's an employee that's involved, there is some language in the statute that talks about reporting it to the ADE. So please know that if there is an employee that I have to do an investigation on, I automatically report them to the ABE even before the investigation is over. I do a follow-up report once the investigation is complete, but I do an initial report if there is some misconduct that needs to be reported. The change to the statute also includes language about grooming, which is new. It is a somewhat new concept to the mandatory reporting policy. So we are looking at training that we can make sure that we give to our instructors and to our staff on how to identify when a student potentially is involved in a grooming situation, or if there's potential sex trafficking. Those are all new issues that we want to make sure that our instructors are watching for, or our employees are watching for, and you all, so that we can keep students safe. It also includes third-party contractors. So prior to this legislation, the consensus was that if you're not our employee, technically, do we have to report? Or do you report that incident to the third party's employer if you are concerned? So with this change to the legislation, they're covered under this policy too. So even if they're not our employee, we still have to make sure that we follow up. We make the report, whether it's to the ADE, law enforcement, or whatever. Next.
One quick question on this one.
Uh-huh.
When it says board member mandatory reporting, it nowhere says specifically West-MEC students. The way I read this first paragraph, if we suspect our neighbor is abusing a child, we have a obligation to report it to DPS.
I would say no, it's more or less.
Can we get legal clarification?
We can, but keep in mind, if it's your neighbor and they're not a West-MEC student, if you as a private citizen decide that, I want to report this to law enforcement, yes. But we have a reporting requirement if it's a student.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a higher standard.
Because this one just says directly to Department of Child Services. It doesn't say to come to you, so that's why it feels like it's broader than what I think people are intending.
It just says minor, it doesn't specifically say students.
Right, any minor, so that's
Minors.
in that first paragraph under child abuse reports. That's why I feel like all employees now are required to report any suspected minor abuse.
I could get some clarification. With your turn.
My question, I have a question on this is there an order of reporting? Do we have to report first to the department, the law enforcement agency, or Dr. Spurgeon or somebody else in the administration?
What I usually recommend, once you're aware, is that you report it to an administrator. Because the administrators and assistant superintendent and district office staff, we have a higher reporting requirement to protect our certification. So if you report it to one of us, then we have an obligation to contact law enforcement. If it's an employee, they'll contact HR to start the investigation, because you have to be kind of strategic, because you don't necessarily want to get the wrong people involved, because that could interfere with the investigation. And sometimes the police officers will tell you, we don't need you to call or do your own investigation or try to figure out what's going on, because they want the police to be able to do that so that they can get the necessary evidence that they need in case a crime has been committed. So my recommendation would be, if you are aware, to contact one of us, me, Dr. Spurgeon, Jared, any of the other assistant superintendents, and we'll take it.
Then follow it up with report to police department.
We actually could make that report for you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, student records. Not many changes to this particular policy. We really don't use a student directory here at West-MEC, so I don't think it'll affect us as much. But parents can, and we did discuss this with the student services team, parents can opt out of providing any third party, like a business or the military or whatever, If they would like to opt out and not have any information shared about their student, they can do that. There's a number or an email that they could reach out to us to let us know. They don't want any of their students' information shared. And then the last one is the student code of conduct. It references, or the update is for the cellular telephone or policies that we've just been talking about. That was the only change there. Some of the other changes that we talked about in the committee was looking at the discipline matrix. We may make some recommendations to move some of the offenses, if you will, the consequences, maybe in different sections. But for the actual policy itself, the only change was just for the cell phones. Any questions I can answer for you? No, there being none. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Dr. Spurgeon, and these will come to you as a second read in August. Thank you.
Especially regarding superintendent goals.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Ramirez. Just wanted to toss out there and give us some time if board members have some examples or some ideas about some superintendent goals that would be of benefit to the district. Just would like to open the floor of conversation and get some feedback on maybe one or two goals that I could add to my 25-26 superintendent performance review.
I thought you were saying you had 25 goals.
No.
Grief.
Yes.
We really have a bunch of them, just only 4 or 5 of them were stated. Everything else we do anyway, whether it's a goal or it's not a goal, so.
Is there, I guess my only question would be, are the goals going to be any different because we have a bond? I'm want to assume it's gonna pass, but if it doesn't pass, do goals change, and have you thought about that at all?
The performance ones won't change. It's just gonna be the two, like last year, we had the performance pay and move to a self-fund health insurance plan. So it would be things like that that would be of great benefit to the district, whether that's more efficiency or cost savings or improvements, those kinds of things. So this is the first time I've done this with the board, so this is kind of new, I think, for everyone. So, and we still have, I'm not gonna bring my goals back until the next board meeting, so you still have a chance to kind of mull over, but I want to give the board a chance to throw out ideas or things that you may be thinking about.
One thing I've been thinking about is just with all the growth that we've been experiencing and then the bond coming along and future and other buildings in the future is creating or presenting to the board a 3-year, 5-year strategic growth plan. How can we be efficient and effective in our growth and opening satellite campuses or opening more central campuses? What would be the effect of each one? Considering also obviously changing demographics and population around the county.
Yeah, I have a couple of them. The last we talked about this, we were talking about reaching out to our underserved community. Whether that would be, some of our aged out foster care or things like that. I reached out to a couple of different centers. One was Thrive Arizona. There's another one that's and they're actually in Peoria. There's another one, it's called Native American Connections. And it's not just for Native Americans. They reach out to all communities. They're called Home-Based Surprise. But they have some shelters in place and they serve from the 18 to 24 community. And they have young mothers in there. I would like to see us reach out and give them a second chance, and see what West-MEC can do for them.
I think we can do that. The funding is the issue about the resources to get the reimbursement back to be able to expend our, time, efforts and resources, but it could be something maybe we can partner and help and assist, whether that's through a plan and process, those kinds of things. We couldn't really do something on our own because there'd be no funding available for us to do that, but.
Yeah, because that would fall under adult ed by that point.
Well, and that was another thing I was thinking about, expanding adult ed, but cause I can see that we're not excelling in that area. And I know that our funding is supposed to be good through at least June 2026, but then that hasn't been dispersed yet. So I think that we need to maybe make a plan, for the worst case scenario in case we don't get federal funding. What's that look like? How are we gonna, move forward with those adult programs? Cause I would really hate to see that go away.
The issues we're faced with adult education is we try not to compete with Maricopa County community colleges. We try not to. And the second thing is because we receive so much in federal funding to pay for the students attending our adult programs, we always get paid in arrears. And we can't use any of our M&O funding, and that stifles our ability to expand because you have to start the year to be able to pay your bills. If you don't have the funding to be able to do that, it's almost like it's a cycle that never ends. And so one of the things that would be a benefit would be to allow some additional funding mechanisms to be able to provide some adult education through our formula and not necessarily have to rely only on federal student loans, FAFSA, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But until that happens, we're just stuck.
Is there a way that we could partner with municipalities where potentially they could apply for grants
I think
to directly fund?
It could be similar to what the city of Surprise does. And they've given us $100,000 to help towards the tuition costs, things like that. That would be something that could be done. And if you stop and think about it, sometimes you have folks in the industry that will really complain about not being able to fill positions, but they don't really put the right money in the right places to be able to fulfill those needs. Surprise did the opposite of that and did what was necessary to be able to fulfill, the workforce needs in IT security and dental assisting. So it's really about making the right decision. So you can complain about a position not being filled, or you can change the conversation and redirect that funding and do something different and get different results.
Linda, sorry, can you restate your goal again? Is it to expand?
Well,
adult
to
programs?
expand the adult education, I think that's, something that maybe we can point maybe for next year for 26, 27. But I would like to see us make a plan or just worst case scenario, what's gonna happen with adult education? What is it that we need to look at to keep our adult education in place?
No.
What you trying to?
Well, I wanted to, I wanted to.
Or aged out.
No, I wanted to expand our adult education, but then when the federal funding may be going away after June 2026. So with that, then we have to look at other opportunities and stuff like that too.
Keep in mind that Maricopa County receives millions of dollars in workforce development money from the state. So I think there's other options there. It's whether or not we can access those.
Is that the
funds.
WIOA?
Maybe. Yeah, if you're asking me a question, I don't know the answer to that.
Because I think that's the funding that will end in 2026.
Yeah, that's all part of the same fund. That's WIOA funding for adult ed. I think it's Title IV or Title II, one or the other.
Title II.
Yeah, Title II.
Yeah.
So that funding is under stress right now. The director Beverly, the state director Beverly Wilson can, she will tell you that it's pretty grim right now. But yeah, I don't think that funding's gonna stay at all.
And I guess I would just add, do we really want to create a goal for Dr. Spurgeon that directly competes with the community college? I think there's how can I say, more bang for the buck to do other things. I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, but if we're going to compete with Maricopa community colleges and they're also a partner in other places, is that really in our best interest?
Yes, but if we make some kind of a plan or something like that to keep our adult ed in place, what are we gonna do if that funding goes away? I mean, you had to make
Well,
plans.
right now it's FAFSA. FAFSA, we only have so many programs that can apply for FAFSA. We can't add any new ones until a certain time period comes by. That's just federal rules.
Mhm.
And so and it's the FAFSA and the student loans that allow us to fund adult education.
Cause they self-funded. We don't pay for it.
Self-funded. You know,
Ms. Medina, it's 2 years after the accreditation, the program has to be in place in order to qualify for FAFSA. 2 years, okay, yeah. So once we start those new programs, it's 2 years before they can even apply those funds.
I guess on a different plane, maybe automation. You know, one of the things we did was board book. We got rid of all the paper stuff. Is there other automation that West-MEC could adopt to get rid of paper? I don't know what goes on throughout the office, but how do we get more electronic and less paper driven? And is there a way we can harness our coding program to create some automation for us?
Was AI going to affect us?
Any other goals?
Yeah, I have another one. I would like to reduce out-of-state travel at least by 1/4.
That'd be a goal though.
Mhm.
That'd be a superintendent goal.
Yes.
And Ms. Musa, one of the things that I have asked, one of the departments to look at is to look at all 36 of our programs and determine what are the required skill sets necessary each year, the training we talked about. And where those are, and to find out which companies offer that training and to reach out to each of those companies, to see if there's a way for us to be able to pay for that training to come to Phoenix. Now, the answer could be no. But at least we're gonna make those phone calls and determine, you know, what might be necessary for us. And again, it may be a small reduction, but at least we're gonna make the phone calls and see if we can make it happen. It may cost us a few thousand to get it done, but it may be less expensive. Sending folks out to get the training, because we gotta have the training in many areas.
Yes, and I understand that, I think our biggest probably expenses would be the ACTE, but we have so many of our, our professionals going out there to being, the presenters.
Professional delivery, that professional.
So they're asking us to go out there and stuff like that. So does everybody have to go there? Can't we bring that home?
Well, the other thing is, once the Buy Resort opens, we're gonna have a brand new opportunity to have a place that may not be in Tucson. And it may be big enough for us to be able to bring folks here.
Yeah.
Rather than having to go down.
And then we have West-MEC. There's a lot of training opportunities, through them. I noticed that there's one coming up on August 13th, I believe it is, another one on September 17th. One is for God, what is it?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to say that we really need to
water.
focus on the agenda item and the goal. We're kind of really
Right.
drifting towards, Dr. Pingarelli would say, we're drifting away from our open
Okay,
meeting laws.
but I would like to see that as part of our goals.
So I have a goal as well. I do want to see if we can, as a goal, create a survey for the employees, health and comfort survey that we can draft, that we can create, and it will be a board survey to the staff.
Absolutely.
And I can work with you, Mr. Garcia. We've talked about that as well. We have one that goes out. We can probably take a look at what we currently have available and then take a look at what might be necessary to add to that survey to get the information the board's required or is wanting to see.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
It was funny because Mr. Garcia, I was thinking about the same thing, is putting out a survey to our employees to give them a chance to give us some improvement suggestions. I think that's.
We do that. I think he just wants to expand that. I think
Okay.
because Mr. Garcia and I had a conversation and he's just really looking for some additional in-depth or information, feedback back from the staff. And our surveys are always really good. I mean, the staff do a great job of that, but the board may want to know some additional information.
At Amex, our employee satisfaction survey directly tied into your raise. If you had 10 or more people, your satisfaction had to be a certain level or it impacted the amount of your raise.
Yeah, there was another one I was thinking about is achieving a 90% employee retention rate.
Beyond that.
What is it currently? Do we know?
The average nationally is like, or even statewide, it's like 10%.
We're on that 93, 94, 97.
10%.
You don't want it too high because part of it is when you bring in
Well,
new
they're just
people,
saying that we
you
were at
bring in
97.
new blood.
Dr. Spurgeon, can you say we just were at 97?
97.
But when you add more people, it starts skewing your rate.
Well, new
That's a
people,
employee.
new people for new positions is not turnover. It's if they don't stay after a year.
And oftentimes the folks that we leave are more often in the adult education department than we have in the regular K-12 or the high school piece. Barb, Smiley, anything, or Mr. Steins, anything? Well, you got now the next. Okay. So if you have other thoughts.
It's gonna be
between now and-
magnificent. It's.
And yeah, if you have anybody else has thoughts, shoot me a text. Over.
Yeah, I think we should probably keep, three of the ones that you had prior. One was the 90% of the central program completers.
Yeah, those three will stay the same, those just the numbers will increase.
Okay. One of the questions that I had is, does that include adult programs or is that just for central?
Just for central, yeah, because the adult programs wouldn't necessarily take the same TSA tests as a high school student would take.
Okay.
And they wouldn't complete a career plan, they're basically beyond kind of the career pathway, they're just here to kind of get this and go. So we don't give those kinds of assessments to our adult programs. But you will need anything? Let me know between now and next month and I'll bring things. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, moving on to a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
No, a second.
I-
We need a second first and then,
Now we can have discussion.
yeah.
Okay. I
Discussion.
would like to pull H2, H4, H5, and H7.
H2.
H2, H4,
Am I allowed to ask,
and H7.
am I allowed to ask why we're pulling these?
Yeah, and we're in discussion session, yeah.
I'm just curious why we're pulling some of these.
Okay, for H2, we have 8 new hires. And 7 of them are starting prior to the board's approval. And so we do have board policies in place. It's policy number 1-102 and then policy 4-101. And 4 that says, that it has to be approved by the board before we can actually hire somebody. And I think if there is an emergency and stuff like that, I don't mind being called into a special Zoom meeting or whatever to approve something. But I think those policies are put in place for a reason. And we need to stick to it. Then. H4. Yes, that was the approval of the minutes. On June 4th meeting, it was number H1. In the future agenda items, I requested that we make all overnight and out-of-state travel itemized per request, separate from the agenda, to create transparency to the public, and it was not reflected in the minutes.
So it's just a correction to the minutes.
Yes, correction to the minutes.
If you let Sherry know what that is, we can make that correction.
And then H5, I just really, I really wanted somebody to go over the teacher performance evaluation and stuff like that. I think it's instead of just approving it, I would like to have somebody go over them because I think they're actually really good. I think the public would like to know about it. I love the process to improve everybody's skill set.
Presentation.
Yeah.
For. What's up?
Or
Didn't we
even if
review
somebody
this
gets up and
a few months
speaks
ago?
to
It
it.
seems like we reviewed the rubric for the teachers.
We did this each year and it changed, I think, 2 years ago where there was a full presentation done. And now it's been a boilerplate, so it's the same, nothing's changed for the last 2 years.
I think Mr. Guy came and talked about it last month when we
That was the benefits, I think, under benefits, is that what you're
Oh, the
thinking?
Prop 301.
Yeah, the property one.
But 2 years ago, when we made modifications and moved to a new teacher evaluation tool, there was a presentation done, but we're happy to, Mr. Guy, we're happy to put together.
Have a few words and stuff like that
Yeah,
to it. I
we're
think it's
happy to
something
do
to
that.
keep the public, up to date on all that kind of stuff. And then, H7. I wanted to go ahead and, I think, just to make a motion to go ahead and approve everything except for the, conference that is on October 20th through the 24th. And that is for the Association of School Business Officials. For the ASBO conference, the international conference in, Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay, so
And one of the reasons why is because, the gal that wants to go is actually, I mean, she was just at the same, at the ASBO conference back in April. Not only that, I don't think that, everybody has to keep going to all of these conferences. I'd like to see us start.
yeah, I think we didn't get too much into discussion. I just wanted to see why everything was being pulled.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then we can
we
discuss.
can approve and then we go into the vote. Okay,
Well, which
all right.
ones? I just need to know which ones are being
H2.
pulled to not be approved, because you have to approve the consent agenda items with the exception of the ones that you're gonna discuss as action.
So approve the agenda items with the exception of H2, H4, H5.
We can make the changes to the approval of minutes, so that should be fine with the modification, so we should have.
Which one was that one? That was,
That was H4,
okay.
and then we'll do.
That's gonna be a future agenda item and not a discussion.
We'll just make the change.
No, actually, I just wanted, instead of having it just be approved, I'd like, wanted somebody to come in and just talk a little bit about it. And if we want to have that in a presentation, a future presentation, I'm fine.
So
Yeah, we don't need.
enter a little bit of discussion. Which ones do you want to keep? Looks like we've addressed two of them.
I definitely want to pull, H7.
H7.
Yes.
Or 2 and 7 are the only ones I'm hearing. I would amend my motion for that if the second would amend.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
You
Approve all
accept
the
that
rest.
amendment? Okay,
So it's H2, H5 and H7.
So just 2 and 7. Just 2 and 7.
Right, this motioning and who's seconding?
Mrs. Molina.
Approving the consent agenda with the exception of H2 and H7. All right, on the question.
Pop up, did I log out?
Yeah. Just popped up. Just came up.
No, you're good. So-
Mine didn't pop up.
There it is.
Yeah, it took a while.
Oh, there it is. There it goes.
Motion passes.
So now we can vote on the consent agenda, or that was everything?
That was it.
Okay.
Yeah. So now those get added to the action discussion, correct? Get added to the action discussion section.
And I think they get added to the bottom, so there'll be 3 and 4.
Here went away.
We're doing H2.
They added to the. I need to refresh, let me see.
They added to the action discussion.
They're gonna be in the consent agenda items, but they're gonna be an action discussion.
Okay, well. Start with the budget, right?
Sorry, it is still number one.
H2.
H2 is number one.
No, we're still doing H2 as an action discussion.
Yeah.
No, I can keep it here on that. I just changed it to an action discussion.
Do those two after the 1 and 2.
No, we're gonna start with H2.
Oh, we start with H2, okay. Let me scroll back up to H2. Alright, motion to approve personnel action items for June 5th, 2025 through July 9th, 2025 is presented.
I'll make a motion to approve it just to start conversation if someone will second it.
I definitely want to talk about it.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion?
Yes. First of all, I think we probably need to pull off the employee board here. He's already resigned. And then as far as I was saying before, 8 of the new hires, 7 of them started prior to the board's approval. And so our policies are not being adhered to.
Any feedback on that,
To your point,
Yeah.
Kusum, as a follow-up to our conversation, I actually did look into it a little bit further. You are correct about the policy. In terms of the governing board having the authority, it's part of your responsibilities to hire and terminate staff. And so as a follow-up to that, I reached out to the trust attorney and asked for her opinion. And her recommendation was, because understanding the fact that for some of these, especially it's the instructors, as I'm sure you all understand, because we have a governing board meeting only once a month, if there's no teacher and they can't get a sub, then there's no one to provide that instruction. It could affect the student certification. So I think in past practice, that may have been why instructors were able to move through the system or recommended for hire prior to the actual meeting. Now, there are some ways that we can address that. Some of the suggestions that she made was we can either potentially hire them as a substitute by giving the superintendent the authority to only hire substitutes and temporary hires until the governing board meeting, but not issue a contract. That might be one way to address the issue. The other way that you could address the issue is to give the superintendent the authority to hire prior to the governing board meeting by consensus of the governing board. That's another option. But for most positions, directors, assistant superintendents, we don't issue the contract until after the governing board meeting. So I think most of the ones that you're seeing are for those instructors that we're trying to get them in the classroom as quickly as possible. If they've never taught before, the administrators want to have some time to go through training, get them up to speed because they may have missed some of the prior trainings. So it really is up to the discretion of the board if you want to allow us to hire prior to the board meeting, but those are some of the suggestions that she
What would be the recommendation of administration to address this?
So the recommendation that I've worked with in the past is for specific months. It really, in some months, some years I had latitude in situations like this where you actually have to put someone in the classroom before you have a board meeting. But typically throughout the summer, so for an example, if we fill a position between July the 9th and July the 28th, we won't have a board meeting until August the 14th. Which means there won't be anybody in the classroom. So the board has typically given me the authority in situations where it's necessary to be able to hire, and then the board ratifies at the very next meeting. But it's only in situations where it's necessary to be done. It's not every situation.
And then do you just say subject to board ratification on August 14th?
Exactly. And we're only talking about a few folks. It's not gonna be a truckload of people.
It's usually during that time frame, correct?
That's when it typically happens the most. Typically, it's maybe at semester and during summertime, if people are leaving a contract, and then during the summertime, between June and like the June board meeting and the August board meeting is what typically happens.
I would be open to, even if you have to terminate an employee, say in November. It's November 10th, we had the board meeting November 9th. You can't wait till a whole month in December. So I still would be okay with, I would expect it to happen less, but giving the superintendent authority, I mean.
And then we just monitor it for a year, just take a look at how for the year, and if we need to make adjustments, we can.
The next board meeting.
Yeah, I would agree with
I'd like to
that
see
as well.
policy written.
So that could be a future agenda item,
Yeah.
and we could approve that next month.
And write a policy and put it in policy, so there is no
We include in
question.
this the actual policy that calls this out, that in cases such as, or we describe what those cases are. Cause it won't be administrators or district level people. It's just, it may be custodians, it might be teachers that were needed. It's only in cases where it's necessary.
Yeah,
That's it.
if, as long as it's all spelled out, that's fine.
That works. And we've always worked it that way.
I think was there a mention that one of these individuals is no longer?
Yeah, he was hired and then they quit within 2 days.
He discovered that it wasn't a good
Okay,
opportunity for him, so he decided not to continue.
So do you want to hold those two off that it pertains to off of this agenda, or do you have to leave?
Well,
them
we
both
did
on?
pay him for the 2 days that he was here, so I think we do still need to have the
Actually,
action.
2 days.
oh, we still need to approve it.
Yeah, you still have to hire them so we can
Oh.
fire them.
Got it.
Yeah,
We sometimes they hire them in between one
Okay.
board meeting and the next they leave.
Okay. Okay, all right. Any further discussion? No, call the question.
So, sorry, would the motion be to approve the agenda item as presented with a future agenda item to discuss the procedure?
With a future modification to the current policy. Does that work, Ms. Guzzo?
Yes, I'll second that.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to H7. Do I have a motion to approve overnight and out-of-state travel request as listed?
I will make that motion to start conversation.
Okay. 2 seconds. Ed, okay, all right, open for discussion.
I don't feel that we have to go to every conference that there is. Especially, we have, our illustrious Ryan French here, who is the president-elect of ASBO. And there are 20 different members that are right here in Arizona that are on the board for ASBO, and many from our member districts. I just don't think that West-MEC has to send, all these administrators for every ASBO conference there is all over the country. The person that is asking to go to this was just at a ASBO conference in April. And I don't think that we really need to go to every single one of them. Now, last year, we spent like $144,000 on conference expenses. And as of from, of course, now this is also an estimate. From January to July, we're on course to spend like $90,000. And we really need to kind of curb that. For this month, just alone, is close to $19,000 that and this is like taxpayer money. So is it really that crucial that we send everybody, you know, or do we have to attend every conference there is? And I just don't think so. I think we really need to be a little bit more responsible. And critical of when and where we go.
One, I haven't, I'm the newbie in the board and I haven't been to these conferences, but based on past history on other boards, and are they really that necessary? I mean, you guys have been to these different conferences. Is it beating the same drum? Is there something new that's that we can't get along without? Is there new technology? Is there new information? Or is it just kind of sharing opinions about something that is gonna do our board or our school benefit from this? Or is just a 2-hour session that they have to attend and then they're free for the rest of the day? I'm just real skeptical on some of these
conferences.
seminars and stuff that they go to. I don't know how, really, you've been there, I haven't. I don't know that I see a huge benefit.
So can I just add 2 cents? I appreciate your concern. I think the first thing I look at is we have a $70 million budget and we're trying to rein in 144,000. I think as a board, if we want to save money, trying to save on 144,000 isn't going to have as big of an impact for students as trying to rein in money on a $30 million building project. We'll have a lot more bang for the buck. And so as I look at things and as a board member, our job is to provide oversight to the district. I would say, let's approve it. And then let's ask that for the next 6 months, whoever does out-of-state travel, we'd like a small page, few sentences for the board that says, I attended training XYZ. It was here. I learned about X. I'm bringing it back to West-MEC, and I expected to add 100 students to it's going to be more efficient. What is the business value? What is the impact to West-MEC? Because I think if we see that over a few months, we'll say, oh, for 144,000, we added 10,000 students to our enrollment. We saved $20 million, but there's probably some benefits that we would say, I'm fine with it. But I think let's monitor it and let's let things go as they have been. And if we could have some insight into what the results are, I think that would help the board. That's my 2 cents.
I think one of the things that.
Oh, go ahead, Ed, I'm sorry.
One of the things that I think is valuable to the travel, and I understand the redundancy going back to the same conference kind of thing. But one of the things that I think is valuable is having our people, whether it's staff or board members, because I recall both you and Mr. Garcia have been to different conferences where you actually spoke at the conference. and presented at the conference, and now you have as well. And I think one of the things that's beneficial from that is getting the state and national, in some cases international exposure to West-MEC. And what value are we getting from that we wouldn't get if you weren't the keynote speaker or something in a particular session? I think those opportunities are extremely valuable for us to continue to take advantage of. I agree with you on if this is the same conference, we may want to take a look at that. Do we need to attend it every year? Maybe every other year? What's the agenda in this conference versus the last conference, and what, yeah, because they're published, you know, fairly far in advance in terms of what they're going to be presenting. So we can take a look at that and make that assessment. But I would disagree in saying, well, I want to cut 50% off of our budget.
I wasn't going there either.
Because we don't know what the cost is going to be from one year to the next in both the venue and the travel costs and all those kinds of things. So I would say that we look at it from the perspective is, what is the expected return on investment of going to this? Whether it's literally more students today or additional recognition, additional opportunities to expand what we're doing within West-MEC that benefits ultimately, and remember, at least in my opinion, our customer is not our student. Our customer is the industry that's hiring our students. Our students are a product, and that's what we're selling. We need to be, in my opinion, again, need to be focused on delivering the best product that we can. And as attending these conferences enable us to do that better.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mr. Garcia, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so I would agree with everything Ed said. I would just add a couple of things. One thing is that in context of why we attend these on a national scale, you have to remember, number one, we're number one. And the techniques, the education, the class courses, the laws that are coming down that other states are utilizing or implementing in their own schools, that's how it gets presented, and that's how it gets handed off to the different schools, to include West-MEC. So you asked, what did we bring back from these things? I would say curriculum. I would say ideas for what courses and programs they can grow. Some of these events have actual industry partners there. Just the conversation of loans and exchange of cards, which means that now we have an industry partner card that we didn't have walking through the door. There's technologies and new training technologies out there to enhance our courses. We have a couple of them. We have robotics, we have welding technologies that I'm sure they were first seen at one of these events, and they exchanged cards and they got the technology. And then there's teaching methodologies like the industry handbook that we're putting together. Other organizations have things like that. We get to hear what they're doing and seeing if that fits within something that we can use. How to build a business partnership, all the way down to how we do in accounting, to our databases that we're going to use to track work-based learning, or our databases that we're going to use to track student progression and performance. So it's not as simple as going there to see the oohs and ahs and get the Schloskis and walk around and grab a cheeseburger. It's a lot more than that. And I guess sometimes, you know, when you go to the show, you kind of want to know what the play is all about. If you don't know what the play is all about, you're probably going to sit in your chair and go to sleep. So in these events, you have to go in knowing what you're attending, understanding what you're supposed to pull out of it. It's actually a job to go to these events and pull something out, because you're supposed to be professional. And if you're a professional, you walk in there, you're not walking in blind to have a cold beer. You're walking in really to get something done. And some of that's partnership, some of it's ideas, some of it's alignment with what the nation's doing with these different schools from different states. Like it or not, there are some states that do have better programs. And there are some states that are doing it better, but you'll never know unless you're there because it's not in a magazine, it's not on TV. You're not going to hear it on a radio or a song or anything like that. The only way you're going to get it is if you attend the events, and you meet these people, and you understand what they're trying to push. Now, I do believe in being conservative on the debt and what we pay. I get that. And if we're being out of whack, then obviously there has to be controls. But I would just, as we're thinking about this, try to understand the big picture of why. And if we're the first ones out of all the Department of the governing boards, if we're the only governing board on planet Earth that wants to limit that, then I would say there's all the schools of all the states attendees. So we must, just know that we there's a value. You have to understand the value, or you're right, you shouldn't go. And if you're going just to be entertained, that's not a place to go. If you're going to go to do some work, that's where you go. So that's my 2 cents.
I think what would help the board after hearing everyone's comments is that is in the description, that table that's presented to the board is to include more concrete benefits of what benefit I'm going to get out of going to this conference. Cause right now, some of the description, it's just kind of vague. It's a bit general language. I think that would really help the board make a better decision on whether we approve these or not, to see, this is why I'm going. These is what I expect to come out and how it's gonna benefit the district. And then follow up after the conference with just a brief highlight. Yeah, a brief highlight of what you learned. Yeah, a couple action items.
Or something. Because
Mhm.
I guess the thing we've had the same discussion for about a year on different things, is the board really needs some demystification about travel of staff. I don't question it, but it seems like it's the same thing.
Yes.
There is so vague
Yeah.
that we're not seeing,
Yeah, help us understand the value.
understand the value, because by putting vague stuff in there, it causes more confusion than value.
Ms. Wiley?
I understand this question. I had the same question. I've been on the board for a long time. And I thought, why do they have to go out of state for their training? It was totally foreign to me. I'm not a teacher. I'm not involved with education. I personally think at this point, my own experience, I have gone to probably in 6 or 8 out-of-state conferences. Some of them are invaluable, even to me, what I've learned. I have found, at least from my experience on this board, that this is the way education works. They go to these conferences at different parts of the country and they learn stuff. There's a budget, it's in our budget, let them go. That's my opinion.
Can I just make 2 comments, Mr. Chairman Ramirez? First of all, in the 3 years I've been here, we really don't have people that abuse the system. There may be other systems that do. But secondly, remember, keep in mind that our performance is extremely high in this process and systems in place. And what you don't want to do is muzzle the mule that treads the mill, right? So we also have to know and understand there's things that we have to do to be number one. To stay on top, you got to be innovative, you got to be creative, you got to do extra things. And Mr. Strunk, I think you make a great point. I mean, really, the amount of money that we spend based on a $70 million, $60 to $70 million budget is really, but just so that you know and understand that the position I'm in right now, we don't have folks that go out and abuse this in any way, shape, or form. But there's ways in which we might be able to become more efficient, as I mentioned before, to bring more training to us. But the other thing that we have to keep in mind is, as a board, I want to caution you on this, is that we can't promote our employers paying the tuition for our students who get hired to get their future training. And then as a board, be opposed to our own classroom teachers and staff going out to get the required training as well. And so I think there's a fine line you have to walk there. Efficiency for sure. And I think there's ways we might be able to make it better. And I think I've done a good job, and our departments have done a good job of limiting the number of folks, especially in those out of state, like for example, the Hawaii trip. There were some districts that sent 15 or 18 people. We sent 3 folks. 2 of them were board members and 1 person was up for an award. and I'll always be that way. So I want to make sure that we get a bang for the buck. But I like the idea about providing some information. And what we've done in the past, which I think worked well, is we have the Aurora plan, the strategic plan. So anytime someone was to go out to a conference, that goal had to be tied to an actual strategic goal into what they were gonna actually accomplish. So if it was goal 4 or 5, they wrote just a small statement that said this, under goal 3, let's say it's human resources, they would attach it to the goal and write just a short summary about what they wanted to bring back to the district based on that strategic goal. So it's always tied to the district plan. There's things that we can do to make that at least clearer about the purpose as to why we're going and what we're after.
Yeah, I think just as an example is when I went to the CTE policy, I stopped by David Schweikert's office and I talked to Dr. Spurgeon and he's like, they already called for a tour. And so sometimes those visits, because you're there in person, well, it's helpful to have a congressman want to tour the West-MEC facilities. And so what's the value of that? Well, it's visibility at the national level. And so,
Just having West-MEC there.
yeah.
And some of kind of.
And I agree, you know, to a certain point, you know, and I definitely, when we have our, you know, guest speakers at these conferences, we need to go. You know, but I think there needs to be some discretion on some of these conferences. We don't have to have everyone go. They can bring some of this stuff back home. You know, especially when, you know, a lot of the things, you know, like I say, for ASBO, we have so many professionals right here in Arizona. There is no reason why we can't bring some of that right here to our campus or someplace here in Arizona. Why do we have to go to Wisconsin or wherever to go and get that kind of training?
And a lot
It
of,
makes no sense to me.
yeah, and that would depend, depending on the conference and the training, but I think the board has made a lot of valid points. We do have to be judicious in how we pick and choose conferences, how many people go to the conferences. And you just have to be prudential with the use of taxpayer money. So I think what's really gonna help the board understand the value is have a better description of the conference and what we're getting out of it.
Okay.
I think that would help a lot.
And
And
the
the
What-
follow-up.
Yeah, what is it that they didn't know before that they need to know?
Because the other thing is, let's take the ASBO one
Hmm.
that you brought up. She can come back and do a brown bag lunch series with the rest of the department. Hey,
Yeah.
these are, you know, and let the board know, hey, I came back and the reason they sent me is I'm the best one at train the trainer kind of thing. And so that makes sense, but give the board more, I think it really comes down to the board needs more visibility of the results of these.
Chairman, you know, I think one of the best points that were made, not that the other ones weren't, but Mr. Garcia made the point that this is just the way the system works. It's the way the system is set up and you really can't change. I mean, the system of people going out to conference, I mean, it's been that way since I've been in education for 35, 30, whatever years. And so sometimes it's hard to get away from the system. So, but we're always mindful. I think we've done a good job by the department of sending the right people in the right places, whether it's work-based learning or policy or, you know, whatever those.
Every industry does conferences around the country. It's not unique to education. It's just you have to manage the budget.
I would disagree with that just a little bit because I could tell you that, for instance, the one in Tucson coming up, you're gonna have a lot of announcements from our state superintendent that's gonna probably challenge a couple of schools and how they operate. And I know I'm giving a presentation on information that the schools are gonna take with them because they've never heard what I'm gonna say when I say it. So I can tell you that it's gonna be interesting. So and they don't know this stuff. And I ain't gonna tell them until I do my presentation.
For the question.
Yeah, with that, I'm gonna call for the question. So you.
It is to prove.
I just want to
I
make one
would
more
like to
point.
motion.
I just want to make one more point. Having been to many, many conferences throughout my career, one of the things that we need to remember is typically one individual is not going to be able to cover everything, all the breakout sessions in a particular conference.
Just not possible.
And typically the way, when I sent people that used to work for me on these conferences, they would know, okay, you're going to this session, and this session. And probably typically 2 sessions per day or 2 sessions per morning, 2 sessions per afternoon. And then between the two of us, we'll be able to cover 8 sessions. And you take notes and all that kind of stuff. And then you come back and say, okay, what did you get? So that's, and I'm not advocating that we need to send two people, but just know that you're
It
not
just
gonna
depends.
cover everything that's being presented with just one person.
Well, many times they're recorded and you can purchase the recording of the sessions.
Or see them online, so do you wanna make your modification to your?
So I guess, I
So we
would
have so we have a motion, a second, and you want to make an amendment to the motion?
Well, I was gonna say, I'd like to make a motion to approve all of the,
Overnight, not a state
for
travel.
overnight conferences, with the exception of the one for October 20th through the 24th.
Mr. Schreiner, you
I still have a motion on the floor, and I think I would do the amendment of, could we get more clarification, better front end stuff? And then follow up of the benefit for the board for the next 6 months. That would be my amendment, but approve everything. Would you accept that amendment?
I would.
Okay. So my motion on the floor is first before Ms. Bosum's, and that would be approve everything. And I call for that question.
I think if there's a motion for an amendment, we vote on the amendment, whether we adopt the amendment or not. If it's adopted, then we add it to your.
I heard motion, not an amendment. Is your an amendment or a motion?
You making an amendment to the motion?
You either have to amend my motion.
Amend that motion. So confusing.
Yeah.
Amend that motion, with an addition to approve everything.
So you're withdrawing the ASBA or ASBO one.
Mhm.
Well, no, I would like to add that to the to your amendment.
Oh, no, you're removing it from the approval of conferences, correct? You don't want to approve that one.
I don't want.
Okay, all right. Now, and my understanding is
Vote on the amendment.
we
first.
vote on that amendment. So do we have, so you're making the motion for that amendment? Do we have a second for that?
Well, for the purpose of getting the vote, I would second.
Okay, because if there's no second, then it dies and then we go back to the original motion. Okay, so you want to also remove your amendment?
Well, that way we'll get a vote on it and.
Okay,
Move on.
okay.
The vote would be, if you're making a motion to approve it, then if Linda doesn't want that approval of all of it, then she would vote no.
Mhm.
So.
You still need to vote on your first motion. It's still on the floor.
So we have an amendment to it, and that is to remove it.
To remove
Yeah,
it,
so-
If you accept it, to modify your motion. your
Well, he
first motion.
seconded it, so it has to be voted on.
Mhm.
And so we can just vote on that.
Yeah.
Can we do a show of hands?
Yeah, we can do a show of hands. We can do a show of hands, okay. Okay,
So this would be the motion taking off the person
Yeah,
not going
so-
to ASBO.
yes, if you're in
Everybody else is to go,
agreement,
But not ASBO.
yeah, if you're in agreement with removing the ASBO conference from this list of conferences. So that's.
One yes.
Mhm. So we can do a roll call, just make it easy.
Yeah, because I'm on here. You can't see my hands.
Yeah,
So we can open it or I can take a verbal.
whatever's easiest. Okay. We have the prompt. It's ASBO, isn't it? Or is it AASO?
AASBO.
Make that correction after. One vote.
Do you have it?
You voted for it?
I voted already.
Back in. What are we voting on?
The amendment to take off ASBO to the approval list.
So a yes would be to remove it, a no would be not to remove it. Okay. Yeah, well,
Are you voting?
I did. Didn't go through.
Yeah, it's still like.
There. I must show up first because I'm B, right?
So the motion does not pass, so we go back to the original motion you made. And it was seconded by Ed, and you wanted to add that.
Yeah, it's just that we add the.
clarity.
Clarification.
And then the follow-up for each travel for the next 6 months, just so the board can start to have insight. And I think after 6 months, we can end
Okay,
it.
all right, call the question.
Robert, do you have it? Still there?
Robert?
Garcia, are you still there?
Can't see you.
Not coming up.
Mr. Garcia?
I'm checking to see if he texted me, but he hasn't. Did he drop off on the Zoom call?
No, I got back on. I apologize. My internet's bouncing. What are we doing? Let me see here.
We're on H,
Yeah. And this was Frank's,
Yes, original,
Right.
this is the original one to approve all the travel.
H7.
okay, and that's all travel, right?
Yes.
With Mr. Garcia chaperoning all travel.
Oh, if I had the hours.
And attending all the conferences.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we can move on to recommendation to adopt the proposed budget. Mr. French.
Did the presentation, yeah. What's that? You already had the presentation, so you
Yeah.
haven't seen the motion in this.
All right, can someone make a motion to adopt the budget?
I'll make a motion, we adopt the budget.
I second.
Linda seconds, call the question. Your motion passes. Moving on to discussion of possible action regarding continuing in-service training and development for governing board members. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
I would like to amend it.
Oh, we need a second first and then.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a second now, discussion.
Yeah.
Wasn't it $5,000 last year? Don't we get a cost of living increase?
This is an amount not to exceed. You don't have to use it all.
How many years have we had this and has it always been 5,000?
Yes, it's the second year, and
This is the
it's an
second
amount
year.
not to exceed. Really, if you attend two conferences, that's about it. That's about all it does.
And you know what? I'd like to limit it to 2,500. You know, instead of 5,000. There are so many things that we can attend right here in Arizona and just attending right here on the West-MEC campus. You know,
So-
that we can learn so much.
I get that, but like the example of the CTE policy conference in DC, that's the only place you're gonna get to meet with David Schweikert, and he's gonna call for a visit of our campus. So I think sometimes we don't have control over where it's at. And I just look at some of these, the conference registration can be as much as $1,000. Yeah, $500 for airfare, 4 nights at a hotel of $250 each. You're at 2,500 and you haven't eaten a meal. And you haven't paid for any transportation.
So 5,000, I haven't used mine for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I haven't used mine
Yeah.
since.
I mean, I think it's up to each board member to be diligent about how they spend the money.
Mhm.
And $5,000 is, you know,
It's reasonable.
Of the 35,000 that's available, we have 7 board members, 5,000 each, that's 35,000. How much of that has been used? In the past years, like 10%, 50%?
We can get that number for you.
I imagine not all the board members of, just from what I'm hearing, have used it.
Well, I
Yeah,
haven't traveled at all this year, so I got 0, so whatever's left in mine is still
I
there.
only went to the one.
okay. Yeah, I haven't used, but, okay.
Come to the policy. Keep in mind, it's just an amount not to exceed.
Yeah, it's an amount not to exceed the 5,000, correct. Yeah, and the same thing here, like I went to one conference, I think, in Tucson, and I paid for my own food and lodging. The district just paid for the registration.
Okay.
So that was it. So yeah, it's up to each board member.
Arlington, Virginia.
Any additional discussion or amendments to the motion? No? Okay. Mr. Garcia?
Nope, I have nothing.
No? Okay, well, hearing none, call the question. I think, who seconded?
Mr.
Ed?
Molina.
I think Mr. Molina.
I did. No,
Well, right, yeah, I guess we see it, did, so whatever, so Mr. Garcia said.
Okay, motion passes. All right, future agenda items. Anyone have any future agenda items?
Mr. Chair, I had a question about future agenda items and just something I was thinking about today during one of the conversations that I guess it wasn't today, it was yesterday's with Dr. Spurgeon and the SIPI group is do we have any, or I guess the agenda would be a suggestion, right? So can we put together a I would say a group that would be able to talk about adding additional things into our new schools in terms of like Native American art, something that reflects Arizona, or because our schools are they're orange and they're very industry centric. But I think that would it be would we be able to put in something, even if it's because in my mind, I would even be happy to donate something, but is there a way for us to look at some of that? I don't know. I'm not even sure if I'm asking the right question, but in that context of being able to help to for the school to look at design options internally that reflect Arizona's culture, or the board or the superintendent or the history. I'll leave it there.
And we're just gonna look into that.
Mr. Garcia, we'll just have to have a conversation so we
Yeah.
can kind of define further what it is you might be looking for, maybe as some examples. One of the things that we don't want to do is keep in mind as we try to put the students in the most realistic situation as if they're actually going to the world to work. We don't want to, I don't want to say K-12 comprehensive school it up, but there might be some artwork because there's definitely some design, there's some sayings, there's some quotes, things like that that would be, germane to the state of Arizona that we could talk about. So let's just have a further conversation to see what you're looking for.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Yep. Sure.
Anything else?
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to review policy 1-102 and make some revisions to it.
On
We
that thing,
also, I think we need to have, I have presented a couple of different budget carry forward policies.
okay.
I'd like to make sure that that's put on the agenda next month.
Also the
For review and comment. Okay.
Also the policy about hiring instructors before a board meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's three policies. Okay.
Let's see.
Don't we have a schedule of
policy renewals or revisions?
That was, my understanding is that, Dr. Thurman was that the recommendations would come to me and then I would schedule a meeting with Dr. Spurgeon, Dr. Chairman Ramirez to review and agendize. So it's gonna.
Yeah. If you
Yeah,
had
we can do that.
policies, it would come to you and then we would sit down with you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I've already sent them to Chairman Ramirez, so.
Yeah, we've started the conversation. We just need to get to that next step. Okay,
I'd also like to get, maybe get some quotes on integrated financial software programs so that we could have a little bit more clarity on our vouchers. And I understand that, I know that all of us, we sit there when we approve all of these vouchers and half the time we don't know what we're approving because we really don't know where that money is actually being spent. It's just there's such a high level of it. There's,
I think if we could get the code for what each of those buckets represent, how we put the vouchers in there and then you put the budget. I think one other additional item you could add is
If
the
there was any-
breakdown for like the first 3 digits represent administration or whatever. The next is the location. And so if you include that key in it, then I can see this 15-digit number means, hey, at the Northeast campus for the welding program, we spent $1,000 at O'Reilly. It makes more sense.
That's what I was asking for, but from what I understand, our program, whatever we use, doesn't go to
Well,
that
there's a
level.
key that they can provide as an additional item. Mr. French, I see you shaking your head. You know what I'm referring to?
I would just recommend that we not look at new financial software because that's a serious third order change in our organization.
If
We're
we
talking
could
about a
do,
major
if,
deal.
I've been asking for that for a long time.
there might be another solution like you suggested, as long as we get that information. Okay, all right.
I know where it goes.
Any other agenda items?
That's it.
Okay, all right. Motion, do I have a motion to adjourn? To adjourn.
So motion, so moved.
Third.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Garcia.